to you live on a Wednesday night. Going to be previewing the AFC and NFC South in our continued NFL offseason preview series. If you have not seen the other ones, we so far have done the West and we have done the East. So make sure you go back and check out both of those episodes along with our episodes where we break down every single free agency signing from week 1 and week 2. Also going to be talking about a little bit of NBA and the 2012 draft in honor of Levante David retiring. So definitely going to be a good show. Want to stick around for that stuff at the end. But the NFL is making some changes, and like a league that is making money, they are greedy and want to make more money. So they are doing Wednesday night football to kick off the season. So you kind of get an extra bye. Season starts on a Wednesday night. And then we are also doing a Thursday night game in Melbourne, Florida as well. No news on if we're going to do a Friday night game yet, but now we're starting out on Wednesday night. I don't think this is going to continue the entire season though.
Yeah, so it's going to be Wednesday night with the Seahawks. We'll find out in May who they face on their opener, but they have them, and then they're going to Australia for Thursday night, it looks like. So I don't mind them going. They can go wherever they want as far as like around the world. For me, I just really like when it's Monday, Thursday, and Sunday. But when they get into those other days, it can get a little bit much for football. But I'm excited for football to be back, and I like that they slowly sprinkle out the schedule over time.
Yeah, and we're already almost upon the draft, and at the same time, we'll have the NBA playoffs. And then once that's over, we'll really be in the thick of training camp, and it'll be about 2 months until the football season kicks off. So definitely interesting there. And then they're going to be doing some more locations for their international games this year. So, along with Melbourne, Florida, we're going to have two UK games in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We're always in London. They're also going to be in Madrid. That's going to be a one off. And then they're playing in a cricket ground in Melbourne, Australia. That's interesting. And then
Interesting.
they're playing in Mexico City again, Munich, Germany, Paris, France, and Rio de Janeiro,
Gennaro,
Brazil. Janeiro, Janeiro, because it's Spanish or
something like
Portuguese.
that. Yeah, I like that. I know the Belgium game. I'm not the Belgium. The Berlin game last year was really successful. I feel like the Mexico City games are always great for some reason. They always bring the energy there. Hopefully, it's Lions Chiefs. We get another Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes showdown. But I like these matchups. And then we already know for the London games, we're going to see the Jaguars. So we can just announce it now. Jaguars in
Yeah,
London.
yeah, probably both of the games as well. They've been sending the Vikings there. No Dublin game this year. I thought we had Dublin last year. I guess they didn't love that one.
That's unfortunate.
And then in other NFL news, we had Jackson Smith and Jigba explain why Boye Mafe and Kenneth Walker aren't on the team anymore. He signed a historic 4 year, $168.6 million extension on March 23rd, making him the NFL's highest paid wide receiver. Deal also includes 120 million guaranteed with a total value of 195 million over 6 years and features a 35 million dollar signing bonus. So this year he is still in his rookie contract, so he's going to get that 35 million plus 1.25 million for his salary on his rookie deal. And then his actual
Bravo.
deal kicks in.
Bravo. Well earned. Last year, he had one of the best wide receiver seasons of all time 1,800 yards, 10 touchdowns, wins the Super Bowl. Much deserved. $42 million annually, though. That is insane. Well deserved, though. 24. He's going to spend pretty much his entire prime in Seattle, but huge signing for them. It is unfortunate that they had to lose Kenneth Walker and Boye Mafe in the process, but bro got his bag.
Yeah, and he's offensive player of the year, and he was the best wide receiver last year. And the thing with this is you're paying Sam Darnold, but you're not paying Sam Darnold top dollar as far as the starting NFL quarterback. And then once you move on from Sam Darnold, you're probably going to be either paying a rookie quarterback or another bridge type of figure, or you're just going to have Sam Darnold maybe for the next 5 to 8 years, especially with how modern NFL players have been able to continue to play with quarterbacks. So you have your quarterback on a team friendly deal. That's why you can do this. If it's some team like the Cowboys or the Bengals with Joe Burrow, this hinders you a lot. But you pay him, and if you can hit on your draft picks, then you're in pretty good shape. You really just need to focus on that running back position to give him some more stability on the offense. But I definitely like this one a lot. Seattle has proven they're back to their drafting ways with players like a Menahue last year, and Mike McDonald being able to coach that defense. So they definitely believe in their system, and some of the losses you can definitely replace, I would say.
Yeah, I think their biggest one that's going to be the hardest to fill is Boye Mafe. But Kenneth Walker, as great as he is, they do have Zach Charbonnet, and running backs are fairly disposable in the NFL, so I think they can replace him. But the way that they've drafted, they have like Charles Cross, who they also hit on in the first round a few years ago with their offensive line, and they don't really have a lot of holes, even with some of their losses. So Seattle should still be competitive in this division, even with some of their losses.
Yeah, and this is a good deal. This will probably age well for them, but it's tough paying a wide receiver. But if you have one of the top wide receivers in the league, you definitely want to lock him down because if you don't pay him, someone else will. And the gap between the highest paid wide receiver and the fifth highest paid wide receiver now is about a $10 million a year gap. So you can just see
Jesus.
how fast these contracts escalate. And I believe the next big wide receiver up to get paid is going to be Puka Nakua next offseason. So let's see if he can break the bank, maybe get 170, 172 if he can stay on the field and out of trouble.
Yeah, and that's the big if with Puka Nakoa. Hopefully he can. We love Puka Nakoa, but he's had, especially honestly, this past 12 months has been tough for him. He's getting sued by a woman because apparently he bit her shoulder, is what I'm hearing from Puka Nakoa. Did you hear about this?
Yeah, I heard about that, and I don't believe it. It's like they're claiming that she wouldn't give him her juice box, and then he bit her. Like there is no way that this story is real. I saw the headlines like Puka Nakua yells, calls her a juice box, and then bites her. I'm like, in other news of stories that didn't happen, I'm like this doesn't seem believable. And if it did, I mean, is this
That's
early
just
onset?
crazy.
Like, that's crazy. Like, Cam Scatabo came out and said that CTE isn't real, and then Poco Nakua goes out there and bites someone in the same week. Like, I don't know.
Says hold my beer,
Hold my beer.
basically. Hold my beer. But I mean, Puka will deserve every dollar he gets. I'm excited to see what he does, but he's got to stay out of the headlines ideally. But good signing from him. We also had another big wide receiver deal as well. Um, just as we were talking about the Broncos, Sean Payton, friend of the show, loves our show. They trade for Jalen Waddle literally the day after we cover them. And what did we say? We said they need a wide receiver. They go out, they get Jalen Waddle. They also exchange for a first round pick, a third, and a fourth this year. They get a fourth back in return for him. But Jalen Waddle, Dolphins get 3 picks out of him, move on from him, and now you have Cortland Sutton and Jalen Waddle paired alongside Bo Nix. What was your early reactions with Jalen Waddle?
Yeah, it's definitely bittersweet for Miami losing him, but he's someone where you have to make a decision. Are you going to be ready to pay him if you're the Miami Dolphins or give him the best opportunity to win? And it seemed like they just weren't ready to maybe give him that deal or extend him to a second contract. And then he just wanted to go to a situation where he could go and win with Denver and then potentially get his second major NFL deal there. And I think this is a good deal for both teams. You did give up a lot of compensation for Jalen Waddle if you're Denver. However, you don't really have too many holes on that team. And really, you just needed a guaranteed bona fide stud at number one at wide receiver. And now you have Jalen Waddle and the underrated Marvin Mims, and then Cortland Sutton and Waddle are kind of 1A and 1B. So I think this is going to make your offense a lot more explosive. You already have RJ Harvey, who's coming as an emerging star for you. You have J.K. Dobbins there, and then Bo Nix's mobility. I feel like Sean Payton is going to be able to draw up some great plays. You're going to have a lot of speed. It's going to make your offense a lot more efficient, and you shouldn't be having to come from behind in every single game now. Should be able to just kind of hit those explosive plays in the first half with Waddle.
Yeah, and I feel like this is a huge win for Bo Nix. After what he did in the playoffs, he beat Josh Allen, had a big game there, played well in the playoffs as well, outperformed him, and now he gets another receiver to pair alongside him. And Jalen Waddle has a ton of speed. He's been hurt the last 2 years, but his rookie season he played outstanding, and I think he can get back to form. It's hard when he had Tua throwing the football, and then he had Zach Wilson, and he had Quinn Ewers. He had a bad quarterback situation. Bo Nix, he was good for them last year. I think he's going to help Jalen Waddle resurrect his career a little bit and get back into the winning ways. But I like this trade a lot for Denver, and for the Dolphins to get 3 picks for him, incredible.
Yeah, I think it's a win-win for both teams. Denver, you definitely give up a lot, but you have to do that because you're in the conference championship last year. Your defense is already one of the better defenses in the league. You had the fastest get-off rate with Nick Bonito on defense there, and now this just solidifies that there is a major arms race in the AFC going on right now. Every team kind of had their chance last year with Kansas City having an off year. Buffalo blew it. Denver, Bo Nix ended up getting hurt, and New England was able to take advantage in a rebuilding year. But New England is already set up to have another really solid draft, and they should be better next season, especially with the addition of Romeo Dobbs. And then you have Kansas City adding Kenneth Walker. They now have 2 first-round picks, and now Denver is taking a look at that. We need to go out there and make a big move to counter what the Kansas City Chiefs are doing. You get Jalen Waddle, and then the Bills go out there and get DJ Moore, re-sign Dawson Knox, make sure they have all of their offensive pieces for Josh Allen there. And then you have the Chargers still adding depth to their team. You have the Bengals adding Boye Mafe. Like, the AFC is in for a wild ride next season, especially if Baltimore can hit on some of those picks and then really turn around the defense with Lamar Jackson. Like, it's going to be a stacked AFC next year. Like, everyone thought it was a cakewalk last year. Like, Houston also, we're going to get to the South. Like, they had a huge offseason and actually got some help at running back, too. Like, the list goes on for the AFC.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention the Trey Hendrickson to Baltimore either, and that's going to be huge for Baltimore. Max Crosby could still be on the move. He might stay somewhere in the AFC as well. So AFC is looking stacked, especially you still have Buffalo, New England's been playing well for them, and then the AFC West. Pretty much everybody in that division is on the up. So it's going to be exciting to see. But we'll be previewing the AFC and NFC South today, covering how each offseason has gone and how we expect them to look come this upcoming season.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and start in the AFC South. Just thinking about the South right now, what is the first thing coming to your mind when I say AFC South?
Yeah, for me, the Texans and the Jaguars, they seem like they're playoff teams. The other 2 teams, the Titans, I do think that they are on the up. They've had a great offseason. They spent a bunch of money. Robert Saleh, big addition. They have Brian Daboll as OC. So I like where the Titans are headed. The Colts, they just seem like a team that's kind of lost in the mud. You have all these other teams that we talked about in the AFC who have gotten better. Colts, they seem like they're just running back the same team that lost 7 of the last 8 games. I don't love that for them. But outside looking in, AFC South, I think the Jaguars and Texans are poised to have another great season.
Well, let's see. So, Houston had a problem last year when they got to the second round. They ran into the Patriots, and Dalton Schultz ends up getting injured in that game, but you could argue CJ Stroud had one of the worst playoff runs in NFL history. It actually statistically was the worst NFL playoff run in history. And this is a year where if he had a solid run, maybe he gets to the conference championship, you probably should have gotten to a Super Bowl with this Houston Texans team. And now he's in a contract year playing for his job. You're going to get Tank Dell back. You have Nico Collins, and then you re sign Dalton Schultz. And now let's go through what they did this offseason to kind of reinforce that. And it's a long list. You acquired David Montgomery in a trade from Detroit. You signed Foster Moreau and Dalton Schultz
Okay.
at tight end. So I like the addition of Foster Moreau. He always kind of pops up. He's one of those solid journeyman guys. And then you sign offensive tackle Evan Brown. You re sign Trent Brown. You sign Braden Smith. All of those are offensive tackles. And then you sign Ed Ingram, offensive guard. You re sign him to a $37 million deal. Then you sign offensive guard Wyatt Teller. Then you also signed Daniil Hunter to a 1 year, $40 million extension. That's crazy. And then your defensive ends, you signed Logan Hall, Dominique Robinson, re-signed defensive linemen Naquan Jones and Sheldon Rankins, re-sign EJ Speed. You sign Reed Blankenship, love that, at safety. You also re-signed Mike Stewart. And then you signed Kaimi Fairbairn to a 2 year, $13 million extension. So a lot going on in their free agency right now.
Yeah, I love the addition of David Montgomery. I think him with Woody Marks, that's going to be great to see. Foster Moreau's an underrated ad. You pair him with Dalton Schultz, that offense should look a little bit better. And then their defense, which was already the best in the league last year, they go out and add a few depth pieces there. They re-signed Daniil Hunter to that 1 year extension. That defense, I'm looking at it top to bottom. There's not a single hole in that defense. They have great pass rush. Their linebackers are great. Their corners are great. Their safeties are great. Everything about this Texans defense is excellent. So really, if CJ Stroud can just have a average postseason run this past one, then I think we look at a team that could make the conference championship. They weren't that far off from beating the Patriots, despite CJ Stroud having a complete nightmare of a game. So if they can get CJ Stroud back into rhythm, then this Texans team is going to be a problem for everybody.
Yeah, and CJ Stroud was sacked 52 times in 2025, so definitely on the higher end. So as far as needs for this team, definitely going to be looking at interior offensive line in the draft. You already went out there and you signed um, two, three new offensive linemen there, and then you're probably going to be drafting a couple more, and then really it's just the interior of your defensive line. You already have solid running backs. Your wide receivers are good. Maybe you take a chance on a tight end in the draft to go along with Foster Moreau and Dalton Schultz, maybe someone a little bit more explosive. But other than that, you do have solid players top to bottom. Now it's just that offensive line that certain teams just can't seem to figure out, whether it is the Houston Texans, Cincinnati Bengals haven't been able to figure it out. Seems like Seattle in the Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll era could never really fill out the offensive line. The problem is CJ Stroud really needs everything to go right for him, it looks like, for him to succeed.
Yeah, I do think the addition of Wyatt Teller's huge. He's been a great offensive lineman for the Browns. I like that a lot. And Braden Smith, he's been good. He's kind of bounced around a little bit, but I think he's going to be a nice addition. He was playing for Indy for the last few years. Two guys that have had fairly good offensive lines, so those guys are going to help bolster it quite a lot. If they can hit on a left tackle, that's going to be huge. I wouldn't hate if they went out and got a running back as well. They hit on Woody Marks last year. David Montgomery is a nice ad, but maybe get another running back, as David Montgomery is a little bit older, and typically running backs that go to Houston don't age particularly well. So hopefully they can get somebody there. And then outside of that, maybe they can get another corner. That never hurts. But ultimately, I do think this team, last year I believe they were 12-5. I think they can stay the course depending on their schedule and still be favorites in this division depending on how Jacksonville shakes out.
And then if they don't get it done this year, though, do you think there's a chance that they take a quarterback in the draft? Or
For
are
sure.
they happy with Davis Mills just to like send CJ Stroud a message like, hey, if you don't have a great year this year, we're not necessarily going to give you top dollar, and you may have to test the market because if CJ Stroud again rolls out there with this team, which is arguably the best defense in the league last year, and then you turn the ball over, if you could just protect the ball, your team probably would have been fine. So this Texans team is probably looking for more of a game manager type of situation. So I'd say like this is probably the year we need to send CJ Stroud a message, and I don't necessarily know what the market for him would be like. There'd probably be a couple teams that would take a chance on him, maybe like the Browns or the Jets, I could see, but I don't know if any team would be jumping off their couch for CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I can think like Miami, New York, and then
The
outside of
Cardinals.
that, like yeah, Cardinals if they're in the mix. Um, Maybe Carolina if they get sick of Bryce Young. But outside of that, I don't really see anybody who really has a market for him. It's weird because he's not a bad quarterback. Like I know he had a bad playoff run, but he is a consistently solid quarterback. He's got a good arm, but I just think if he doesn't get it done in the postseason with how he played this past year, then you got to start looking forward. This team's defense is stacked, and you can't keep that defense together forever. So maybe they're a team that goes after one of the veteran free agents that are available next year, or maybe they even draft a quarterback this year to put some pressure on him. But you can't roll out this team another year and have them completely eroded because of CJ Stroud. It's just not going to be. You just can't do it.
Yeah, I could honestly see a situation where if it doesn't go the way Houston is expecting next season, and Lamar Jackson decides he doesn't want to re-sign with Baltimore, Houston will be like, you know what, we'll just go all in for 1 year, trade for Lamar Jackson, and then see if we can finally push past the conference championship, give Lamar Jackson the best defense in the league, David Montgomery, Nico Collins, and some more help along with him, and then see if we can go out there. And then you trade CJ Stroud to Baltimore with a rebuilding team and Jesse Minter. That's not the worst situation in the world. So I could honestly see that being a trade that works for both teams. And then I would definitely give D'Amico Ryans more of a chance than I would CJ Stroud if next year doesn't go according to plan, because the defense was still solid.
Yeah, the defense was amazing last year. They were on track to have one of the best defenses of all time had they have gone over and beat the Patriots. But the defense isn't the problem. I don't think coaching's the problem either. But 5 interceptions, that's not going to help any team, no matter how good your defense is. They held their ground for the most part. They pretty much contained the Patriots pretty much the entire game. I know there was a few pick sixes in there that inflated the score, but for the most part, they pretty much held the Patriots in check. So if it's not going to work out with CJ Stroud, then they need to look elsewhere. Davis Mills can fill that for the most part, but it's just, are you going to pay CJ Stroud $50 million to do what he's done so far? No. If you can sign CJ Stroud for, say, $30 million, that's a lot more of an attractive contract because he's a good quarterback, but his postseason meltdowns you just can't keep that around.
Yeah, and it's also a Houston Texans thing where they've never been to an AFC championship, so could be something also going on in Houston as well. But that is where we're looking at as far as Houston in the offseason right now, who they've signed, some areas that they need to focus on in the draft. And then we go to the other team in this division that made the playoffs, the Jacksonville Jaguars. They lost Travis Etienne, but they re-signed DJ Dallas. They signed Chris Rodriguez Jr. Um, they re-signed Quentin Morris, Dennis Gardeck. They also re-signed Matt Dickerson and Monteric Brown. So they only signed one new free agent, and that was Chris Rodriguez. Big Bajal Tootin fans, I guess, in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I don't love the loss of ETN, and Bajal Tutin's fine, but I think they do need to address the running back position in the draft. They don't have a first round pick. I think they have 3 third round picks that could be put to use. But my big thing is you lose ETN, who was successful you. He helped you in your playoff game against the Bills play well. Outside of that, can Brian Thomas Jr. come back to rookie season form? Because he was really good for them year one. But this past year, he took a step back. Jacoby Myers was a nice addition for you last year. I'm glad they brought him back. Wouldn't hurt to draft a tight end either. My big thing with the Jaguars is It looks like they're going to have Travis Hunter as their main corner. He's going to focus primarily on the defensive side, which I think is the right move. But I just think there's a lot of good on this team, but there's not a lot of great. Trevor Lawrence, we'll see how he pans out this year. He did play well this past year, but defense, we like Josh Allen a lot, but they could use more corners. They could use another pass rush. Maybe they move on from Trayvon Walker, but I just don't know if they have enough picks to fill those gaps. So this year, I think they might take a step back. They were 13-4. I think 10-7 is more like it this year.
Yeah, definitely probably taking a small step back, maybe more dangerous in the playoffs because of their experience. But you have Devin Lloyd that you have to replace at linebacker. You also have to overhaul your secondary. You ranked dead last in 2025. And the Jaguars need multiple high end corners as well. And then you also need to figure out your interior pass rush, and then you need a power running back. So, like, going over that, that's a lot of holes to just fill in the draft, especially for a Jacksonville Jaguars team. And that's why some of these teams, like the Jaguars, make the playoffs and then drift for a few years because ownership just doesn't want to pay him. You're paying Trevor Lawrence a ton of money, and he is just one of those quarterbacks that if you're going to pay Trevor Lawrence a ton of money, that's fine, but you're never going to do anything in the playoffs because you're not going to have a good enough team around him. Like, we can't all be Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, or Tom Brady. And the fact that you're paying Trevor top dollar and you gave him a max contract that fast, especially when you look at that 4th-and-1 conversion that you should have had versus the Buffalo Bills, where he literally trips over his own feet and then falls short. And that was what gave the Bills the momentum to go down and get the touchdown. And then you're paying him all this money, and then his first throw to go to overtime is an interception. Like, really? And it's like Trevor Lawrence is a really good regular season quarterback, but he does just seem like one of those guys that need everything to go right for him. And there's a reason why he was so good in Clemson, because they had the best roster of any other team. That's why, like, college is so tough with these quarterbacks. You're like, this guy's a generational talent. Look at what he did. I'm like, yeah, he also had one of the best college teams of all times, one of the greatest college coaches of all time, the most talent. So it makes your job pretty easy when you just dump a 5-yard screen or everyone else is wide open so you can rip off 60 yards. But when Trevor has to be the guy on offense, we saw what happened versus the Bills. Like, you actually had a better roster than the Buffalo Bills. You were at home, and the difference was you turned it over at the end of the game, and Josh Allen didn't.
Yeah, that's true. And Trevor has a bunch of talent. I think he took a step in the right direction this past year. This is the same guy who's never thrown for more than 29 touchdowns in a year. He's never had a 30 touchdown year. He's scraped 4,000 yards 3 times at this point, but at this point, like, he hasn't put up gaudy numbers. At one point, you could compare his stats to Daniel Jones side by side. QBR this past year was 91, so he's in the mix of average quarterback, and you're paying him $60 million. That contract has not aged well, and they haven't done anything in the playoffs either. So for Trevor, he needs to prove it this year. In Jacksonville, they really need to get a good running back in the draft. And I wouldn't say they've been bad at drafting running backs, but I just don't know if I can put all my faith in a guy who had 80 carries this past year for about 3.7 yards a carry. And, he had some good burst. I think he's going to be fine, but I think the running game is going to take a significant step back, and that's going to hurt Trevor in the long run.
Yeah, and he's scheduled to make 55 million this year, which is tied for second in the NFL as of March
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
2026.
He's not worth it. No offense to Trevor. If you're paying Trevor 40 million, I'd like it a lot more, but $55 million for a guy who can't win a playoff game, I don't love that.
Like, is he even a top 10 quarterback at this point? Can we name 10
No.
quarterbacks better than Trevor Lawrence? Like, we have Mahomes, Allen, Lamar. Would you take in Lamar, 2-time MVP? And
Burrow.
then, would you rather have, Burrow, Drake May? Would you rather have Drake
Drake
May
May.
or Trevor at this point? Was that
Matt
5?
Stafford. Matt
Stafford,
Stafford.
Jordan Love or Trevor?
Dak. Would you put Dak
Dak.
over him? Jalen
Um,
Hurts.
yeah, I would say Jalen Hurts. Yeah, he's won a Super Bowl. I would honestly give Dak the edge, yeah. Especially contract
Caleb,
wise, Trevor's going to be making more money. Caleb Williams, I would put over Trevor.
Brock Purdy.
Goff, I would take Jared Goff over Trevor too, and Brock
Yeah, we
Purdy.
got Jaden Daniels when he's healthy.
Yeah,
Justin
he's
Herbert,
already
maybe.
made a conference championship. So yeah,
Yeah. And then we have Justin Herbert's of the world. You can throw out Bo Nix if you want to. Um, Jordan, yeah, pretty much everybody in the NFC North. Out in the East, you have the Eagles with Jalen Hurts. You have Jaden Daniels, who's been really good. Dak, Matt Stafford, Brock Purdy. So yeah, I mean, we can list at least 10 quarterbacks if we wanted to. I think he falls within like the 13 to 16 range,
yeah,
depending on how he plays.
yeah. But we haven't seen him even have a as good a year as Jared Goff has had when he was with the Rams or when the Lions were at their best. I feel like Jared Goff puts up numbers at least.
100%. Jared Goff definitely belongs. And even in the season when he first rebuilt with the Lions, he had 29 touchdowns, 7 picks with a team that had no business being that good. He played great. This past year, Jared Goff had 4,500 yards, 34 touchdowns. I believe he was second in passing yards. So Jared Goff definitely above him. And then who knows how good Mendoza will be in the draft, but I just don't know. For somebody that you're paying the second most money, he's not even a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, and you can't get out of it until 2029, and releasing him would result in a $21 million dead cap compared to a staggering $78.5 million cap charge if he remains on the roster in 2029.
Jesus Christ.
And he's
That's brutal.
scheduled in 2027 to make 10% of the cap, and then 2028 he's going to be 13.2% of the cap.
Yeah, that's brutal. The reason why they can't build around him. It's a tough site. But Jacksonville, I after we've gone through this team is not going 13-4 next year. I think they go closer to like 9-8 or 10-7.
Yeah, and people will have figured out Liam Cohen's system, and the Jags weren't really going out there and dominating people. They had a couple really impressive wins, but they were against some weaker competition there. And the AFC is going to be stacked, and one of these teams is going to be left as the odd man out. So it's definitely going to be tough for Jacksonville next season. And then we move on. And then we have a team that completely overhauled their entire front office with the Tennessee Titans. So Texans and Jaguars both kept their head coach last year, but the Titans have Robert Saleh, Brian Daboll, and the first 9-man coaching room that is all bald. So you have the all bald team, you have a new logo, and then you also have a new stadium opening up in Nashville, I believe, in next season. And they're slated as a potential contender to host the Super Bowl. So thoughts overall on just their coaching changes right now for Tennessee?
Well, they went from Brian Callahan from Cincinnati. He didn't pan out very well for them. You go out and get Robert Saleh, who was excellent last year, assistant coach of the year finalist for San Francisco. That defense should instantly get better. Their defense was not very good last year. They spent a bunch of money in free agency. So the defense, although I don't think it's going to be a top 10 defense, it's still going to be a defense that is going to make a great stride from last year, a team that was bottom 10 in defense. And then the additions on offense, they get the Wan'Dale Robinsons of the world there. They still have Calvin Ridley. If they can address some weapons in free agency or in the draft, getting a good tight end for them or drafting a replacement for Tony Pollard, then this team that was 3-14, maybe there's 6 wins, maybe there's 7 wins, but I still think that they're going to be significantly better, and I think they're going to double their wins total pretty easily.
Yeah, and for free agency, they went out there, got a solid backup quarterback in Mitch Trubisky, and then you re-sign Julius Chestnut at running back. Congrats, Julius.
Nice.
And then you get Wan'Dale Robinson at wide receiver. You sign 2 tight ends in Daniel Bellinger and Kyle Granson. You get a couple offensive linemen at tackle. You sign Austin Ducalis. You sign Cordell Volson at offensive guard. Then you also sign Austin Sloatman to a 2-year deal. Then at edge, you acquire Tremaine Johnson with the trade with the Jets. You get edge rusher Jacob Martin. Defensive line, you sign 4 players: Jordan Elliott, John Franklin Myers, Malik Herring, Solomon Thomas was also acquired in a trade. Then you also sign Muhammad Diaby, Cordell Flott at corner, Alontae Taylor at corner, Joshua Williams also corner. Then you sign safety Tony Adams, and you re-sign your kicker as well. So a lot of moves for Tennessee. I mean, just looking at that, you see 6 offensive linemen that they acquired on their team.
Yeah, and they needed it. Their offensive line was brutal. I want to say Cam Ward got sacked over 60 times this past year. So, offensive line help's going to help him greatly. He was kind of banged around. He didn't have an excellent start to his season here. He sacked 55 times this past year. Didn't have any weapons, didn't have a coaching staff that worked for him. But I want to see him now. He has a solid defense. They got some weapons for him. They have the 4th overall pick. They can go out there if they want to take somebody like a Jeremiah Love, if they want to take somebody like a Carnell Tate out of Ohio State. They have some picks at their disposal, or they can even bolster up their defense. They got a couple of guys from Ohio State that are available for them at that time. So any of those guys are going to be great for them, whether it's bolstering that defense or if they want to move on from Tony Pollard and get the top running back available for them or a top wide receiver. Anything that's going to help Cam Ward, because last year they did maybe the worst job you could do for a rookie, giving him no offensive line, no weapons, and no defense. You set him up for failure last year.
Yeah, and this could be a team that potentially trades back, especially because you need a lot of elite weapons for Cam Ward, and you need to focus on your offensive line as well. And the Titans want to go out there and sounding like they want to get one of the best wide receivers possible for Cam Ward and really solidify that wide receiver room. So I think they'll definitely draft a wide receiver this year. Hopefully, it's like when the Bengals drafted Jamar Chase, even though not everyone's going to be like Jamar Chase. And then you already signed a ton of players. So, really, for them in the draft, just focus on that offensive line, the weapons. Robert Saleh is already a really good defensive strategist and head coach. So, I don't think you'll need to focus on that as much in the draft if it's not there.
Yeah, I think if they can trade back to like the 7th or 8th pick and go out and get one of those top receivers, there's 3 wide receivers projected to go in the top 15. You have Carnell Tate out of Ohio State, Mekhi Lemon, and Jordan Tyson. You already know how big I am of a Jordan Tyson fan. He's going to be a stud. Jeremiah Love will be nice for them too, but I think they address their weapons first in that first round, and then moving forward the rest of the draft, you go out and get your defensive players. And Robert Saleh, I trust his judgment there, because honestly, with the Jets, he hit on a lot of picks. He was the one that helped get Sauce Gardner in the building for the Jets. He went out and got DJ Reed. So he did a good job with drafting in New York, but unfortunately, on the offensive side, they struggled. So go out and get a weapon for Cam Ward and focus on defense and offensive line later in the draft.
Then isn't it the 4th overall pick that is symbolic for running backs if they're taken? The
Yeah,
Walter Payton was taken at number 4. Ezekiel Elliott also taken at 4. Leonard Fournette, not necessarily generational. You also have Darren McFadden, Hall of Famer Edgerrin James, also taken at 4th overall in 1999. And then
yeah.
wasn't Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley and Jameer Gibbs all at number 4 as well?
Um, Saquon was 2nd overall, but Christian McCaffrey was 4th overall. He's a generational running back. So, and I think Bijan was 8th overall, and Jameer Gibbs I think was 7th. But either way, like 4th round pick, if you can get Jeremiah Love, he has good receiving back skills. He's quick. He's fast. Change directions fast. He's the number 1 graded prospect in the draft. So if you can get him at number 4, you already know that the Raiders are going to get Mendoza, and then the Jets probably need to focus on defense. Jeremiah Love falling to you at 4, that's a home run pick for the Titans.
Yeah, so that would definitely take a lot of the pressure off Cam Ward. So be interesting to see what the Titans have to do. Seems like they have a layup to definitely double their win total from last year if you're Robert Saleh. So excited to see what they do, especially get new logo, new uniforms, new stadium. And then one team that no one is really excited for next year is the Colts. The Colts now seem like they're stuck in the same place that the Cleveland Browns have been, except their entire franchise, where now post Andrew Luck, you haven't been able to figure out the quarterback situation at all. It was Philip Rivers post Andrew Luck, then it was Matt Ryan, then it was Carson Wentz, then it was Gardner Minshew and Anthony Richardson, and then last year it was Daniel Jones. So this team has not been able to replace Andrew Luck as easily as people would have thought, or as easily as they did Peyton Manning. And now they're stuck in quarterback purgatory, and they're forced to re sign Daniel Jones to a 2 year, $88 million deal that can be worth up to $100 million and also includes more than $60 million guaranteed, $50 million in year one. So you definitely front load it if he has a bad year again next year. But Daniel Jones is also someone who has had issues with injuries his entire career, and he was playing pretty good last season to his standards against subpar competition, and then he gets injured. And now Anthony Richardson also wants a trade. So you're kind of stuck where you're not bad enough to go out there and get a quarterback. And then it's also a very bad year as far as a quarterback draft. So there's not a ton of depth at that position either. So now the Colts are kind of just stuck. And it doesn't really matter what they do this offseason.
Yeah, the Colts. We both predicted it that they were going to have a fall off end of the season. They go out and lose their last 8 of their last 9 games to completely implode. And then when it comes to their draft, they don't even have a first round pick because they traded that for Sauce Gardner, who shortly after they traded for him got hurt. And now I look at their team, just like I've looked at them the last decade, where they're just average at pretty much every position. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, he shines for sure, but outside of that, you have Alec Pierce, who's a good receiver, but their receiver core as a whole is lacking, especially after you lose Michael Pittman. Their tight end position, I do like Tyler Warren, but I wouldn't consider him elite quite yet. Their offensive line is fine, but not great. And then their defense, there's a lot of fine players. Sauce Gardner's good. We like Kenny Moore. We like Tre'Davious Ward and DeForest Buckner. But outside of that, their defense is middle of the pack. So this team, like they were 8-9, they're going to be 8-9 again. They were 8-9 last year. They were 8-9 the year before. They're going to be 8-9 consistently. So Colts at 8-9, I think that's exactly where they're going to stay.
Yeah, and it does look like they added some help on defense. You get Michael Clemens, you sign Arden Key, also Derek Nandy, Jerry Tiller, and then Colby Wooden was acquired in a trade, but you gave up Zaire Franklin, and then you also signed Cam Taylor Britt and Jonathan Owens, but it's still one of those teams. It doesn't really matter how much talent that they have because even if they get to the playoffs, say it's with Daniel Jones, like what are the Colts gonna do? Like, are they gonna
Nothing.
go out there and beat a team like the Bills? Are they gonna go out there and beat the Chiefs? Can they beat a team like the Patriots or Broncos, especially on the road? And then your division is also getting harder, where the Jaguars were not super high on them, but they're still gonna be tough, and you have a hard time playing in Jacksonville. And then Houston is always tough, and then Tennessee is going to be a wild card team next year, and they can easily split with any one of those teams. So there's not going to be a ton of easy in division wins in a historically weak division, which is they were beating up on the Titans last season. They played them twice in the first half of the season. And then they didn't really play a team that was in the playoffs last year, and they lost to the Steelers, and that was the team that ended up exposing them with Daniel Jones last year.
Yeah. And so, like, I'm looking at their schedule. The only win that they had from a playoff team was they beat the Chargers handedly. And then the
Oh,
Denver game was the infamous flag at the end of the game that pushed them into field goal range. So outside of that, they beat Denver and they beat LA. But outside of that, you beat up on Miami, who was horrible. You beat up on Tennessee twice. You beat up on Vegas. And that's pretty much all your wins. You beat Atlanta in overtime with Daniel Jones, and then after that, after your bye week, you completely imploded. You were 7-2, and you lose out on the postseason. So, not a way to start. And then all these games that they lost, these were against real teams: Kansas City, Houston, Jacksonville, Seattle, San Fran. These are all teams that are much better, and their schedule should be pretty tough this upcoming season as well. So I just don't think they can repeat success. I don't think they're going to start hot like they did this past year. I think we're looking at a 7 or 8 win team.
Yeah, and it seems like Shane Steichen's on his way out. There's some frustration at the end of last offseason. They're saying we need to go all in, but I do think your wide receiver room is worse without Michael Pittman. I don't think that's just a player you can go ahead and plug and play. And I get you paid Alec Pierce a ton of money, and I think Alec Pierce can be good on a team that has a quarterback that can get him the ball. Like Daniel Jones can make all the throws, but not necessarily at the end of games. Daniel Jones isn't clutch. And then you take away another solid wide receiver in Michael Pittman, who's kind of their 1B and has been their best receiver for the past 5 years for Indianapolis. So he walks out the door. So you're banking a lot on Tyler Warren. Then also, how many elite prime years does Jonathan Taylor have left? Like, you can't take those for granted.
Yeah, he's going to be 27. Well, he's going to end this year being 28. He's 6 seasons into the league. We know how these running backs can age as well. He had a great start of last year. He probably was the MVP the first half of the season, and then he kind of petered off at the end. Still had 18 touchdowns, but still, like, how many more great seasons of Jonathan Taylor will we have, especially when their offense looks like it's going to take a step back without the likes of Michael Pittman, who at one point kind of was their number one this past year. Tyler Warren was good for them, and I think he's going to be good in fantasy for a lot of these people, but I don't know if he's going to be the guy that takes it over the edge. I don't see him as a 1,000-yard receiver potentially. So Indianapolis, yeah, the more we talk about him, the more I'm kind of selling my stock on Indianapolis. And I think this
And
is the
I've been,
last year with Shane Steichen.
yeah, I've been hard on them since Frank Reich, because I thought that hire was stupid to begin with. Like, really? We're taking Frank Reich as your head coach? And I just never liked that. And you get Shane Steichen, and I actually like that hire a lot, and I liked him at first, but they stuck it out with Frank Reich probably a little bit longer than they should have, but they did fire him mid-season, so they've set a precedent that if the season isn't going as they expect, they will fire you in the middle of the year. So do you think Indianapolis is due for another Jeff Saturday type of scenario where, I don't know, maybe Ryan Clark is going to coach the Indianapolis Colts for a couple of weeks, or Dan Orlovsky is going to coach the Colts for a couple days?
Yeah, I mean, goddamn, they had Philip Rivers come out of the grave out of nowhere this past year, and then Jeff Saturday, who was talking on ESPN, and they're like, "Oh, I like what he's saying. He's going to be our head coach for 6 games," which, looking back on, was unhinged. That was an unhinged reaction. So, who are they going to bring into the fold when Shane Steichen is inevitably fired midseason? It's going to happen probably midway through the season. And literally, we can pull it out of a bag. We can pull it out of a magic 8 ball to decide who is going to be their head coach. Because it could be
John
anybody.
Gruden.
John Gruden. That would be amazing. That would be
He
the
talks.
best storyline.
He's on Barstool. I like his Barstool show with Dave Portnoy. He's friends with Dave Portnoy, who obviously has some pretty good connections. So, maybe John Gruden's the next Colts coach if they need one midseason. It'd either be him or Dan Orlovsky would be my bet. Or maybe if you want to go crazy, Pat McAfee, just because he's the home guy. So he would have done everything, been the punter, quarterback, and then head coach for the Indianapolis Colts. Another bucket list item for Pat.
Yeah. Honestly, I like the John Gruden pick. That would be hilarious. I know he wants to be back in the NFL, but yeah, the Colts, what a joke. It's so hard because I can't say that I hate the Colts historically. I have fond memories with the Peyton era and Andrew Luck era, but the last decade has just been pathetic. I know it's hard because, like, he kind of fucked them over just retiring pretty much the last minute. But ever since then, you relied on Matt Ryan, and you relied on Gardner Minshew, and you relied on Philip Rivers as your quarterback. Now you're relying on Daniel Jones, who you know is not the answer long term. Anthony Richardson was a failed experiment. That didn't go well. So now what do? You have no first round pick. You don't really have a lot of picks in this upcoming draft because you sold it for Sauce Gardner. So Colts just kind of be middle of the pack yet again, and maybe even worse.
Yeah, Anthony Richardson, they were betting on talent, but they didn't realize that he was retarded. So that never works out, especially if you're an NFL team trying to draft a quarterback. Where Anthony Richardson, I loved him when he was playing well. He's had some pretty good NFL games, but when your completion percentage is hovering below 50%, that's never going to work, especially when he seems like a guy who struggled to play the quarterback position, but he's uber athletic. He just gets hurt in the most bizarre ways, especially for someone who's so big and physical. He's just a walking injury, and it doesn't seem like he has too much accountability as far as studying film or getting better. And now he wants to leave the Colts. It's like, well, no one wants you. He asked for a trade, and no team has called and said, "Hey, we would love Anthony Richardson." Even the Jets don't want Anthony Richardson. They said, "No, what? You know what? Pass. We'll take Geno Smith instead to be our bridge quarterback. We don't want to play around with him because you're going to be in the awkward situation where you're going to have to pay Anthony Richardson if you trade for him. And what are you going to give up for him? Like a fourth round pick?" And like the Colts
Seventh.
like spent a first round pick on this guy too. And
Yeah.
I think he has a lot of talent. I think the problem was they probably started him too young, and now you play too much of the okay, you're a starter, now you're on the bench, now you're a starter. And I feel like once that happens with the franchise, you need a fresh start. So I think it would be the best move for the Colts, but it's like, where do they go from here? Because I do think Shane Steichen is gone after next season. Are they like just banking on tanking for Arch Manning as a favorite of Peyton? Like, and Arch Manning's like kind of tanked his draft status. I feel like last year people were giving him a hard time.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I think there's going to be a lot of teams interested in him either way. But Anthony Richardson, through 3 seasons, has thrown for 50% completion rating, 11 touchdowns, 13 picks. That's not a winning formula, especially when you count how many fumbles he's had. On top of that, I just don't think anybody's interested. If anybody's going to take that, it's going to be somebody who takes him after he's already been cut. And I don't know if Anthony Richardson's going to make it out of training camp for this Colts team, especially when they have Riley Leonard there as well. I just don't think there's no winning formula for him. He's got to get out of Indianapolis, and if anybody takes a chance on him, he's not going to start either way.
Yeah, and then it looks like Jonathan Taylor's also going to be entering the final year of his contract extension. So I could also see them trading Jonathan Taylor midseason as well, where if the season doesn't start out well and he's like, "Hey, I want to go to a team where I can actually win." It looks like he's going to be due for an extension, and then he has $0 remaining on his contract for 2026. Um, so yeah, he could potentially be on the move if they don't start out well.
Yeah. Where do you think he could go? Because I'm trying to think of some teams that could use some running back help.
New
Um,
England,
New England. New England would love, although they have Travion Henderson. He's a stud.
the Rams.
Rams are always in the mix. You could swap him for Kyron Williams. I know the Rams would love to pay Jonathan Taylor. The Bears, if they want to sign a good running back, they can get him. Bears are going all in. I can see that happening. Um, if the Eagles want to get younger, they can get Jonathan Taylor. Or if the Giants think that Cam Skadeba's brain is complete mush, and they're probably right, maybe they go after him. But Cowboys are always aggressive, so I'd like to see where he ends up. I don't think he's going to stay in Indianapolis, though.
Yeah, I could honestly see him in a Cardinals uniform.
Cardinals would love him.
James
Just
Conner's a
whether or not
little
he's
bit
going to.
older. You don't
Yeah.
have like elite running back talent. If you have some cap space, I feel like Jonathan Taylor could be a really good fit in Arizona.
Arizona would love him. It's just whether he would love Arizona. That's the question. That'd be nice to see. But I bet if they traded him, they could probably get a first round pick out of Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, at least a couple, if not. But yeah, that's the Colts. Colts are kind of disheartening. We went on a tangent about the Indianapolis Colts. I didn't realize I hated them as much as I do, but find out something new every day. So that is our AFC South preview for the offseason. And then we pivot to the NFC South, and this is should be another interesting one here. Let's start out with Atlanta. Atlanta has a new head coach, and they went out there, got two-time Coach of the Year, Kevin Stefanski. They also signed two new quarterbacks to their roster with Trevor Siemian. They signed Tua after he got cut, and him and Michael Penix are basically the same guy. And then you signed Brian Robinson to a 1 year, $2.5 million deal. You signed Jahan Dotson and Alameda Zacchaeus. You also signed Austin Hooper, stealing him from the Patriots. Re-sign, or you give Kyle Pitts the franchise tag, and then you sign Samson Mbukam. You sign Aziz Olajuwari. You sign Cameron Thomas. Re-sign Lacole London, and then you also signed Deshaun Han, Chris Williams, and Christian Harris, and then you acquired Sidney Brown in a trade with the Philadelphia Eagles. So overall, they signed, looks like six defensive linemen, and they traded for a safety. So, passing or pass rush was an issue, so it looks like they're trying to resolve that a little bit here. But offense, still the same thing where quarterback's going to be a question mark.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, when Kirk Cousins started for them, they were 5-2 on the last 7 games. So if they can just get a guy that can push the ball down the field, then I think this offense is going to be fun. The issue that I had with the Falcons last year, that I still have for them this year, is you have this great wide receiver in Drake London, who's a stud, and you have Bijan Robinson, who's also a stud. But outside of them, there isn't really any other top receiver that you need to guard for. If you can double Drake London, Jahan Dotson is not going to break you, nor is Zacchaeus. Kyle Pitts isn't going to break your heart either. This team doesn't have a first-round pick either. So they have all these things working against them offensively, despite the fact that they have a generational talent in Bijan Robinson and Drake London, who's a beast. But I don't trust their quarterback situation, so I think their offense is going to be middle of the pack. And then their defense, I don't think is going to be excellent either. They'll be better with Kevin Stefanski, but 8-9 is probably what we're going to see again.
Yeah, I think they should be better. You should at least have a better scheme to maximize your offense, and then you have a chance to really go out there and focus on edge rusher in the draft, and it's going to be a deep position. So I definitely think the Falcons' defense is going to be better, and then you go out there and you sign a couple wide receivers, but Darnell Mooney did move on to the Giants, and then you have Zacchaeus now, and then Jahan Dotson. But you need to go out there, get another receiver in the draft, and then you need to really figure out the tight end position. You went ahead and tagged Kyle Pitts, but does he want to be tagged, or is he gonna be seeking a trade if he doesn't find a long-term contract extension? So it's going to be, is there a market for Kyle Pitts? And you probably have to figure that out in the draft this year. Also, just your defensive interior. So really just edge rusher, find some wide receiver depth in the draft, and then figure out what we're going to do with Kyle Pitts, because he showed some promise, but like he just has 1 or 2 games each year to trick people into drafting him in fantasy, or people are like, I think this is going to be the year where Kyle Pitts has a breakout year. Like, you mean in year 15? How long have we been doing this for? It's like, yeah, but he's on his 7th team now, and I think this offensive coordinator and this quarterback who actually likes throwing high and over the shoulder is going to really figure it out with Kyle Pitts. Like, all right, yeah, we'll see.
Do you remember that game in against Tampa where he had 3 touchdowns, 166 yards, 12 catches? That was a generational game for Kyle Pitts. I think he's like Kyle. It's so hard for me to like hate on Kyle Pitts because he's not a bad tight end, but it's the fact that he was taking the pick before Jamar Chase, the reason why we're going to call him a bust someday, despite the fact that he's not a bad tight end. But they were calling him the greatest tight end prospect of all time, and he's cracked 1,000 yards once in his career. That's just not going to do it. And at this rate, he scored 15 touchdowns in 5 years. Just not a big touchdown machine either. So yeah, I don't see it working out there. But we'll see how it ends up with Atlanta. But I don't see. I mean, they're still going to be in the mix for their division, but how good are they actually going to be? They're just going to be the casualty of the wild card team. Whoever wins the wild card is going to beat them in the playoffs if they win the division.
Yeah, so definitely be an interesting year for Atlanta. I think it could be a case of a new coach, will go out there and potentially win the division, but it will be tough because you're still in a interesting division. I won't say good. I'll say interesting. Another team is Tampa Bay. They lost Mike Evans and Tristan Wirfs last season, and then Bucky Irving was in and out of the lineup as well. So he never really got to 100% himself, where he was the fully healthy Bucky Irving at the beginning of the season. You started out 6-2, and now you've kind of just free fell out of the playoffs, and now you really need to replace your edge rusher. Levante David just retired today, so you need more linebacker youth, and then also addressing corner and guard for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But didn't do too much in the offseason as far as signings to really do that. You re-signed Cade Otton. You got Kenneth Gainwell, which I liked, and then everyone else you signed, Alex Anzalone, that was a good pickup, but definitely need to get some younger players on that defense.
Yeah, my biggest problem with the Bucks is I love Baker and I love their offense. They are going to miss Mike Evans quite a bit, but Emi Ibuka is a stud. We'll see how much we have left with Chris Godwin. The biggest thing is how old they are, and especially on the defensive side of the ball. This team has fallen apart the last 2 years just based on their age, and they haven't done any favors getting younger either. So, unfortunately for this Bucks team, I do think that this is kind of the last year that we'll see with Baker Mayfield potentially, as he might be getting a new contract next year. They have the 15th overall pick. If they use that pick on probably on the defensive side of the ball, go after one of those Ohio State prospects, that could bear well for them. But really, I think they need to bolster that defense and focus on maybe replacing Mike Evans as well, because that's not a guy that is easily replaceable either. But can they get him? I don't think so.
Yeah, they've had some good young receivers come in there, though. You have Eme Ibuka, and then Mike Evans kind of saw what life would be like without him last year, where he has had some injuries that have been nagging him the past few years. And last year, he was forced to miss some time, and his 1,000-yard receiving streak came to an end. So they've kind of been planning for this. So I don't think that'll be as big of a loss as people make it out to be. It's really going to be, is Baker and Todd Bowles going to be there next year? Because if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers start out hot again and then fail to make the playoffs, I don't know how long they're going to stick with Todd Bowles before they decide to change it up at head coach.
Yeah, and I know Baker is up for a contract. He could be up for 40 to 50 million dollars if they so decide. Baker Mayfield is going to be great if he's getting a contract of 40 million, 30 to 40 million, and that's why it's worked out so well in Tampa Bay because they've been able to build around him. If he's going to get this massive contract, his last big contract, I just don't know how it's going to bode well for them. It's been a good fit for them, but you've seen them just kind of fall apart the last 2 years, and they're not real contenders either. They're fun. I like them quite a bit, but as they continue to get older, it's just I can't believe in the Bucks too much.
So as we're talking about hypothetical quarterback trades, if the Bucks necessarily they're not in love with paying Baker Mayfield, or they want someone who seems like a higher value quarterback in their mind, not necessarily in reality. And, another team just has had enough. They've hit a wall with this quarterback and want another change of pace. Why not a Baker Mayfield and Dak Prescott swap? I mean, I could definitely see Dak Prescott in Tampa Bay wearing the uniform. I think he would be successful in Tampa. Had some good playoff battles with Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Patriots there. And then also, if Baker Mayfield goes to Dallas on a cheaper deal and they can put some more talent around him, could also see him succeeding there. Would Jerry necessarily want to trade Dak? No. But I think that would be a trade that could work out for both teams, where Tampa maybe sees Dak as more of a stable long-term quarterback, and then Dallas can get a quarterback at a discount with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, and hopefully a defense.
I love that hypothetical. Baker Mayfield in Dallas would be electric. I think he's probably the most likable player in the NFL. I don't know anybody who hates Baker Mayfield except for Colin Cowherd. That would be electric. Um, I mean, if they do that trade, they're going to free up like $30 million. If they can get Baker Mayfield on a $30 million deal, have that extra money go towards George Pickens. The Cowboys have been maneuvering on their defensive side of the ball. They got Quinnen Williams there. They have Kenny Williams there as well. So I think that'd be electric. But I think this is probably the last year for Tampa with Baker Mayfield before ultimately I think they end up blowing it up and rebuilding from there.
Yeah, so definitely interesting to see. So I do think this is going to be another year for Tampa where it's kind of a feel out year, and it's really, I think, a 40-60 shot that they do make the playoffs. I don't think the chances are too high, especially because we have the New Orleans Saints who got busy in the offseason, and they went out there and they signed Travis Etienne, and then they also had Tyler Shuck at the end of the year was leading the league in clutch fourth quarter points and then fourth quarter passing yards. And you also signed Zach Wilson, Ty Chandler as well at running back. You got Noah Fant at tight end, which I think is a solid pairing for you. And then you get offensive guard David Edwards. You sign linebacker Caden Ellis, and you're starting to come out of your dead cap hell where you're not out of the weeds yet, but you're almost there. And then next season, you should be really good. But I do think that the New Orleans Saints have a shot to be the dark horse team to win this division next year, especially with how Tyler Shuck was playing at the end of the year. I like that a lot, especially if you add Travis Etienne when he's already a dual threat quarterback. I think the Saints have a chance to take the biggest step forward in the NFL next year.
Oh, 100%. Every year there's always a team that maybe on paper their record looks bad, but they play hard every week. And for the Saints, they had Kellen Moore, and the first couple of weeks they were getting their ass beat. They got their ass beat by Seattle. Buffalo took care of business against them. The Rams game was kind of the last moment of their season where they played like crap. But after that game, after week 8, they beat the Panthers. They beat the Bucks. They went on a winning streak. They finished the season strong, playing competitively. So this is the team that I think is the obvious. I think this team is the obvious team to win the division. Honestly, I mean, obviously you have the Falcons and the Bucks that are still there, and so are the Panthers. But I think if they can just hit on a wide receiver with that first round pick, they're slated to take Carnell Tate out of Ohio State with that 13th overall pick, who could be
Oh,
a stud for them. Yeah, passes the name test. If they can get another wide receiver to pair with Chris Olave, you already have Jawan Johnson, who's an underrated tight end, and Travis Etienne. He's got fresher legs behind him. If you pair him with Alvin Kamara, that's going to be an elite offense there. Tyler Shuck, I think, is the real deal. And their defense still has enough talent that you still have the Chase Youngs of the world, who's a talented player. You have Kool-Aid McKinstry there, who's been a hit for them. So they have
Kool-Aid.
talent on their defense, and they've been doing well defensively and drafting as well. So I like the Saints team a lot. I think they win 10-plus games.
Did you say Kool-Aid or Kool-Aid?
Kool-Aid McKinstry.
That if that's ever been a name test passed, I don't know what a past name test is. That is electric.
That's what I'm saying. So, like, the Saints team, it's not just that they've invested this offseason. It's not just what we believe in Tyler Shuck. It's like this team has energy and invigoration going into this season where the Bucks, there's uncertainty. They fell apart last year. The Falcons, there's a new regime. We don't really know. Carolina, we shall see. But the Saints, they ended the season hot last year. Tyler Shuck looks like he's the real deal. They just need another weapon for him. And the Saints team is a playoff team that could actually probably win a playoff game.
Yeah, I could definitely see them winning a playoff game. New Orleans has always been one of the toughest places to play in the NFL, especially when you're in a dome and then you get that fake sound effect that some dome teams do, like Atlanta, who's been caught doing that in the past. But I do think they're going to be a really good team next year, second year breakout quarterback. And then when it comes to Carolina, that is the interesting question because, yes, you did win your division last year. However, you did do it with a losing record. And yes, Bryce Young did look good at times, especially versus the Rams last year. However, he still was inconsistent to say the least at times, and he did play well in certain stretches, but they were the every other week team where we could literally just say, well, they lost last week, so it means they're going to win this week. And that was pretty much true throughout the entire season for the Carolina Panthers last year, where you were going to get a coin flip and it was going to be right pretty much every single time with the Carolina Panthers. So to me, with Bryce Young, this doesn't feel like a team that's going to take that next step forward. This seems like a team that, if I was guessing or betting, that would be the odd man out that was in the playoffs last year. Because I do think New Orleans played them at the end of last year, and I think they beat them twice last
Yeah.
season. And they gave Carolina a hard time. And Carolina finished 8-9. They kind of gave the Bucks trouble even with Tom Brady when it seemed like the Buccaneers were a team. So they've always kind of been the best team in that division since the Sean Payton regime, especially with that dome.
Yeah. And Carolina is just one of those teams where, again, like literally from week 8 on, this is how it went. They got blown out by Buffalo. The next week, they beat the Packers in a very mysterious game. And then the Saints, they lose 17-7. Bryce Young plays terribly. And then the next week, they have an overtime win against Atlanta. Then they lose to the Niners. Then they have this huge win against the Rams. They lose to the Saints the next week. They beat the Bucks. They lose to the Saints, embarrassingly, with Bryce Young throwing for 54 yards in Week 17. So, like, every single week, you just never knew what you were going to get with them. Those type of teams do not have long-term success. Their offense, we like McMillan a lot. He's a stud. But Chuba Hubbard as your main running back, we don't love that. And then the receiver core outside of him is kind of weak. Their offensive line is pretty weak. And their defense is better than what it's been in years past. But this team, it's just, to me, is just average as it gets. They're like 7 wins. And the rest of this division isn't necessarily invigorating. But I think if we're looking at all 4 of these teams, the Panthers, to me, look kind of like the weakest.
Yeah, and you have your left tackle who is recovering from a knee injury. He had a torn patellar tendon. So your left tackle is going to miss some time. So you're going to have some insurance for your left tackle, and then your starter is going to be coming back. And then you also need some depth on your defensive front, and then you'd like a better tight end than Tommy Tremble, even though he's given you some solid runs. And you need more speed at receiver to go along with Tedder McMillan. But like all these weaknesses, and it still hasn't gotten to running back yet, which I still think is going to be a hole for this team. Where last year you had some magical games from Rico Dowdle. Bryce Young looked terrible at times, and then you had a playoff game versus the Rams that was really competitive, but it just seemed like one of those odd matchups that Dave Canales just kind of had a pulse, and Bryce Young felt comfortable versus the Rams because he already had the confidence that they could beat them because they beat the Rams when they were on a heater last season and kind of put an end to the Rams run last year. So it's like it was one of those weird matchups where I do think the Carolina Panthers aren't gonna necessarily win the division. They may still be 8-9 though.
Yeah, I mean 8-9 seems attainable. If they lose their first game, we know what week 2 is going to look like for them. But I mean, this entire division. I mean, we're talking about a division that last year 3 teams were 8-9. I think this next year the Saints are going to be the ones that are above 500. I think they're going to be 10-7. I think the Saints are going to be really good, especially if they hit on their draft. The issue with the Panthers is like they made the playoffs. They don't have a super high draft pick. They don't have a lot of picks in general. And for them, like I feel like there's too many holes. Chuba Hubbard's a fine running back, but is he the answer? Probably not. Their receiver core could use another receiver. They've needed a tight end since Greg Olson, to be honest, and that's not going to solve their issues either. So yeah, this team I think is just going to be. This is when I think the magic of Bryce Young is probably going to fizzle because he's improved gradually over the last 3 years. Now it's a contract year. I just don't think this is the team for him.
Yeah, and coming into that draft, it was Bryce Young is really good, but he is short, which could be a problem. And then a lot of people were saying C.J. Stroud was dumb, and he fell to the Texans for that reason because of the film study where he had some weird tests where he didn't score well. This was the scouts saying it, not me. But you could potentially have a draft where the number 1 and the number 2 pick at quarterback are not going to get paid a max contract.
Yeah, and that was the draft where they had that huge deal that ultimately got the Bears Caleb Williams because they traded DJ Moore and a couple of picks to get Bryce Young, which ended up getting them the first overall pick the following year. Which ultimately, that trade, especially if Bryce Young doesn't get repaid, that's going to go down as one of the worst trades in NFL history, especially if Caleb Williams is as good as we think he's going to be this upcoming year.
Yeah, and they did some like they added AJ Dillon to replace Rico Dowdle, but AJ Dillon hasn't played in like 2 years. He's been simulating his farm. And then you got probably the best edge rusher in free agency, to be fair, in Jalen Phillips, and then you also get Devin Lloyd. So I do think their defense will be a little bit better, but I do think their offense is going to take a step back, especially because my biggest problem is they brought Kenny Pickett in the building. I don't like that. If I am an NFL franchise, I do not want Kenny Pickett anywhere near my building, especially a inconsistent young quarterback that's still trying to find his way. Like, what is he going to learn from Kenny Pickett? And if you're Dave Canales, don't get any ideas like, oh, Kenny Pickett's going to be my Sam Darnold. He's going to be my quarterback like Baker Mayfield, where I could maybe Bryce Young gets hurt and I can make Kenny Pickett look good. Like, no one's going to elevate Kenny Pickett. So, like, I also don't like that Kenny Pickett is in the building. And then you signed John Mechie at wide receiver as well, who is, again, someone just in and out of the lineup and inconsistent, in A.J. Dillon as well.
Yeah, and not only that, but like they haven't re-signed Andy Dalton, who I feel like has been a huge leader for Bryce Young, and at points with a lot of these teams with Carolina, they've looked better with Andy Dalton. He's still a free agent. Will they bring him back? We shall see. But if I'm them, why would you bring somebody who's kind of in the same boat as Bryce Young, inconsistent, when you could be bringing in a veteran leadership like a Joe Flacco, who just recently re-signed with Cincinnati, or someone like Andy Dalton, who's still floating around there, who could be successful? Or better yet, even a Kirk Cousins would be fine there if they so wanted him to be there. So there's a lot of different people they could throw in there, but I think a veteran would have been a lot better for him.
Yeah, so definitely going to be interesting. Also, Jalen Phillips, you did sign him to a big contract. However, he is also a risk. Like, he is someone who's dealt with injuries, and he should be a really good edge rusher, but you're also gambling on potential for him, where he seemingly got overpaid to what the projections had him going for in the market, which is good
Yeah,
for
how much
him.
did they end up? How much did he end up signing
120.
for? Yeah, he's not worth that much. No offense. No offense to Jalen Phillips. He's a stud, but I don't know if he's that good.
Yeah, signed
I
for
don't think.
4 years, 120 million.
Yeah, I mean, like he's been good, but I don't. I think that's a lot of money to fork up with a guy who had 5 sacks last year. So I don't know if I
Yeah,
love that.
so yeah, definitely have the Saints winning the South next year. Probably team. Do you think the Falcons and Panthers and Bucks are all in a similar situation? Do you have a preference on who's going to be at the bottom? Personally, if I had to pick right now, I'd probably go with Tampa.
Tampa. I feel like at the bottom it's going to be Carolina, honestly. Atlanta, I think Kevin Stefanski's a great coach. I like Dave Canales as a coach, but I think Carolina, their offense was already bad last year. You had a Rico Doidle Linsanity run that brought you into a lot of those games. And then outside of that, like Atlanta, I can see potential in Atlanta because they do have Drake London and Bijan and Kyle Pitts. I can talk myself into Atlanta. Tampa, I can talk myself into because of Baker and some of the talent that they have there. But Carolina, I don't really see much talent there outside of Tedero McMillan and some nice players on defense.
And then, speaking of Tampa Bay, Levante David, some say the great Levante David retired because he is one of two players in NFL history alongside Ray Lewis to record at least 1,500 tackles, 40 sacks, 10 interceptions since tackles began being tracked in 1994. So Levante David, Ray Lewis, only people to have 1,500 tackles, 40 sacks, and 10 picks.
Legend. Absolute legend. We love Levante David, Super Bowl champion. I have the 2012 draft in front of me. Levante David, I believe, was taken in the second round. but I have it all up in front of me, doing our classic recaps. Levante
For his
David spent.
for his Buck stats too. Before we get into the draft, he was tied for first in Bucks history, sixth in NFL history for total tackles with 1,714. He's first in Bucks history in solo tackles at 1,172. He is also first in Bucks history and ninth in NFL history in tackles for a loss with 177 tackles for a loss. He has 33 forced fumbles, which is number one in Bucks history. He has 21 fumble recoveries. You guessed it, number one in Bucks history. He also has 42 and a half sacks, which is sixth in Bucks history. And he's the only non-rusher in the top 10 actually for that. And then interceptions, he had 14, which is second among linebackers in Bucks history. So guy had a hell of a career for Tampa Bay, and down the entire list, he's pretty much first in every category except for sacks, and he's the only non-rusher in the top 10.
And I'm stunned because I have his pro reference up. He only had one Pro Bowl. Isn't
That's
that for
crazy.
me? He's only a one-time Pro Bowler. He's a one-time All-Pro, yet wasn't a Pro Bowler that year. Ironically enough, he's a second-team All-Pro twice. So he's been an All-Pro three times, but yet he's won a Pro Bowl. He's made the Pro Bowl once. Just evidence why the Pro Bowl is the dumbest thing in professional sports. But full-time, spent his entire career in Tampa. He's definitely going to be retired with Tampa. And I think he's a. I think. Do you think he's a Hall of Famer? I think he could be.
I mean, he's one of two people to have 1,400 tackles, 40 sacks, and 10 interceptions. When your name is there with Ray Lewis as one of the only people to do something, I definitely think he should be a Hall of Famer. Especially he leads his franchise in tackles, and then he's sixth in NFL history for tackles. So like I feel like that also
He's
is
got to be.
another key stat there. And then as far as, 14 interceptions, that's really good. And then retired as the NFL's leader in solo tackles.
Yeah, I think he'll be there. But I have the draft in front of me. This is the Andrew Luck draft and Robert Griffin the third draft. Going through the first round, we'll go over some of the positions: quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receivers, and then some notable picks in the later rounds. But the top five in this draft goes Andrew Luck, Robert Griffin III, Trent Richardson,
Oh,
Matt Khalil, and Justin Blackman for the Jaguars, wide receiver who registered 93 catches over a 3 year, just a 2 year span. But just starting out with those five, Andrew Luck, obviously one of those what if scenarios in the NFL, what he could have been if he played out a full career, but multi time Pro Bowler in the MVP conversation some years. And then Robert Griffin, another what if. There's a lot of what ifs in this first five. Robert Griffin, what happens if he doesn't get injured? Because he was the rookie of the year that year. Trent Richardson, kind of a 1 year wonder. Cleveland got a first round pick out of Indianapolis for him, and then he just completely eviscerated himself. Justin Blackman, one of the biggest wide receiver busts in that draft, just to start that out.
yeah, and then I'm also looking at Matt Khalil, who's also considered a draft bust. He started out as a Pro Bowler in his rookie year and then declined from 2013 to 2019. And the Panthers, despite his struggles, signed him to a $55 million deal, but he's also considered a draft bust because I'm looking I'm like, well, he's a tackle. Who else is here that isn't a draft bust? And this is honestly a really bad top half of the draft because you also like would you rather have the longevity kind of Russell Wilson or would you rather have the elite years that Andrew Luck gave you? And would Russell Wilson have been Russell Wilson if cuz he's technically the best quarterback I would say in this draft. But that was with the Legion of Boom. So if you swapped him with Andrew Luck on the Colts, is he taking you to a conference championship against the Patriots or a divisional
No,
round?
no, he's not. Because we saw what happened when that defense fell apart. You saw what happened when his offensive line was in shambles. Andrew Luck had one of the worst offensive lines in the history of the NFL, and he brought that team to 11-5 pretty much every year that he played consistently, despite the fact that he had no real weapons. He had T.Y. Hilton as his main wide receiver, and outside of that, he was throwing to couch cushions otherwise. So I don't think he's there. Robert Griffin's a sad story, unfortunately for him. But yeah, like the first five, like, and it continues onward because then there's the Morris Claiborne's, you have Mark Barron, and then Ryan Tannehill at 8, still kicking around somewhere. And
Stephon
then
Gilmore, you have two corners taken over him, and he definitely should have been the number one corner in the draft. And Luke Kuechly was pick 9, but honestly, Luke Kuechly, looking back at it, should probably be the number one pick in this draft.
100%. Luke Kuechly, Hall of Famer now. And then as we go down, the wide receivers in the first round were, I mean, they had Justin Blackmon, who was a fifth overall pick. He was a bust. Michael Floyd for the Cardinals, he was a bust. Kendall Wright for the Titans, he was a bust. And then AJ Jenkins. If we're looking at just the first round of wide receivers, this is one of the worst wide receiver first rounds compared to the drafts like the Jamar Chase draft, where you have him, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Waddle all within the first 15 picks. Here, the number one wide receiver I see is Alshon Jeffries, who was a stud.
That's
Mohamed
pick
Sanu.
45. There's so many picks in front of him.
Yeah, the first real wide receiver hit was pick 45 with Alshon Jeffries. Later, you have Mohamed Sanu in the third round, T.Y. Hilton in the third round, and then there's the Travis Benjamins of the world. There's the Marcus McNutt for the Eagles. Like, the list just goes on, but that wide receiver, this might be one of the worst wide receiver drafts I've ever seen, to be honest.
Yeah, because like even Mohamed Sanu, the only bona fide number one in this draft is Alshon Jeffrey. And Alshon Jeffrey's not like he was really good, but he wasn't like break the entire game open like Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. He was like, yeah, he's like, you're not mad if he's your number one receiver, but I don't think he's ever
Yeah.
top 5.
No, yeah, T.Y. Hilton's probably better as a 2. He's kind of like, I feel like the 2010s version of Cortland Sutton in a way. He's a solid receiver. You like him better as your 2, but he's a fine number 1. He was good for them. He had a 1,400-yard season, 4-time Pro Bowler. Mohamed Sanu was always the number 2, whether it was with Chad Ochocinco or in the Atlanta era. But that wide receiver room's rough. That is a rough wide receiver class. And then as we look at the tight ends, let me pull these up here.
Doesn't look like there's any tight ends in the first round. First one was Kobe Fleener, drafted
Yep.
by the Colts at
Dwayne
number
Allen.
34.
You have
The
Dwayne
Dwayne
Allen, who
Allen.
was good.
Stephon Hill.
After that, it kind of just falls off. Not really a good tight end draft either. You have Dwayne Allen and Kobe Fleener as like the main tight ends, but everybody else fizzled out pretty much immediately.
We do have the greatest fantasy player of all time, though, in this draft, Doug Martin, 70-point fantasy game.
Yeah. Doug Martin, stud. Running backs outside of that, you have Lamar Miller in this draft. Alfred Morris in the 6th round, we'll talk about in a second. But the number 1 running back in this draft is probably Doug Martin or Lamar Miller. This is a bad offensive talent draft, to be honest.
Yeah, a lot of corners taken in this draft, too. Like, you're looking at it, like, every other pick is a defensive back. And it looks like the ones taken in the top 10 were both busts. Because when you go back, you have Stephon Gilmore. You also
Harrison
have
Smith's in there.
Jackrabbit Jenkins, who is taken as well. And then Casey
Harrison
Hayward
Smith.
as well.
Yeah. Then we got not a bad corner draft. Stephon Gilmore is
Tremaine
definitely the best in
Johnson.
that. Yeah. Edge rushers. This is when the Seahawks drafted Bruce Irvin. So this was a part of the Seahawks draft when they got Russell Wilson, Bruce Irvin, and I believe another stud.
Yeah. Yeah, and then
And Bobby Wagner.
yeah, Bobby Wagner was taken. I don't see like any like standout Patriots picks in this one.
In New England, there's Chandler Jones, Dante Hightower, Nate Ebner for the Patriots. Those guys panned out, I'd say, especially Chandler Jones.
We had Greg Zuerlein and Randy Bullock, so a solid kicker draft as well.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, Greg Zuerlein, Randy Bullock, Blair Walsh, infamous Blair Walsh, missing the 27-yard field goal. Honestly, I think the highlight of this draft is the linebacker class because you have Luke Kuechly, Dante Hightower, Michael Kendricks, Bobby Wagner, who's still playing, Levante David, Demario Davis, who's still playing, and then the list goes on from there. Emmanuel Acho, personality.
Kendall Reyes, who I met from New Hampshire, was in this draft.
Kendall Reyes, what position did he play?
Defensive tackle. He was taken by the Chargers. Let me see. Where is Kendall Reyes?
Oh, yeah. Second round.
But yeah, Demario Davis taken in this one, along with Levante David. And then you also have Dontari Poe. Fletcher Cox was in this draft as well. So definitely more of a defensive draft. No real offensive talent. Because I wouldn't say you love any of these quarterbacks starting for you right now. And this draft was 2012, and I felt like the 2004 draft had way more longevity as far as quarterbacks than this draft did. And so you have Andrew Luck, Robert Griffin III, their careers end early. And then Miami takes Ryan Tannehill as the next quarterback at number 8. And then you also have Kirk Cousins and Russell Wilson in this draft at quarterback, too.
There are some legendary quarterbacks. I mean, you got Nick Foles later in this draft, who has the infamous playoff run with the Eagles. The Browns have one of the dumbest picks in NFL history, drafting 28-year-old Brandon Weeden out of this draft. Brock Osweiler's in this draft as well.
He
where
got
the
paid.
Texans gave him. He got paid a lot of money.
Million.
Borderline robbery there, to be honest. But quarterback, I can't say the quarterback draft is bad, but it's just one of those drafts that you look back on 15 years later with a little bit of sadness because you have Andrew Luck, who could have been a generational Hall of Fame quarterback, Robert Griffin III, who was really exciting for a while before his injuries really piled up. Russell Wilson still floating around. He's probably still a Hall of Famer, but he's had a really rough second half of his career. Then we have Kirk Cousins. Those are kind of like the main guys. Nick Foles has a good Wikipedia page with what he's done. And really the only guy standing still who could still potentially start is maybe Kirk Cousins, maybe Russell Wilson.
Yeah, Brandon Weeden if you give him a call. You also had Josh Norman in this draft too. Another good corner. So like again, like a lot of really good defensive talent, but no real outside of Alshon Jeffrey, no real stud at wide receiver. Doug Martin is the best running back in the draft, and then you also have some good kickers, believe it or not, with Randy Bullock and Greg Zuerlein.
Yeah, guys that are still kicking around too. But interesting draft nonetheless. It's interesting that there's still guys somewhat floating around here. Demario Davis is still kicking around. Russell Wilson's kind of in the tail end of his career. And then far out, we have Kelvin Beachum, who's still playing right now. And he was drafted pretty much the last overall pick. He played for the Cardinals this past year and did fairly well for them. So he's still kicking around. But 2012 draft, a lot of interesting developments in this draft.
Yeah, definitely interesting. Linebacker, definitely the best position. Luke Kuechly won Rookie of the Year, and you can see why it was tough for Levante David to get Pro Bowls. Well, he did get a lot of tackles. He's sixth all time in NFL history in tackles, and then he also leads the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in most of their categories. But he's also going in the same draft class as Bobby Wagner, Dante Hightower, as well, to shout out someone else for the Patriots, and then Luke Kuechly and Bruce Irvin. So, like, you're looking at the class that he was drafted in. It's like, no wonder it was tough for him to get on a Pro Bowl team, because this is just 2012 for Levante David. So, like, we did go through an era where this was just a really stacked position. Then he made it 14 years as far as his career, 2012 to 2026. So, definitely proved it with longevity, and then as a Super Bowl champion as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But an interesting draft nonetheless. Um, Happy trails, Levante David, potentially a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I would definitely put him in the Hall of Fame. I think he's done enough to deserve it. That Super Bowl ring should put him over the top, and then he's one of two people, along with Ray Lewis, to accomplish something. So if your name is with Ray Lewis, I definitely think he should be in the Hall of Fame, especially for Levante David. So hopefully he has a good retirement. Definitely has a lot of potential after football. And then the year the draft happens was 2012. So the MVP that year was Adrian Peterson. The league leader in passing was Drew Brees. Adrian Peterson ran for 2,097 yards, and the league leader in receiving, not far off from Adrian Peterson, was Calvin Johnson with 1,964 yards receiving as well.
Still a
So a
record.
stacked year. Drew Brees threw for 5,100 yards too.
That's insane. That's the record is still in place for Calvin Johnson at basically 2,000 yards.
Yeah, and
So it's
then
insanely successful.
that was the last time, I believe, a non-quarterback won MVP. So it's been 14 years now.
Which is insane because we've had seasons like Christian McCaffrey's 2018 season. We've had Derrick Henry runs. We've had plenty of other. Jonathan Taylor was an MVP candidate at one point, but still no MVP outside of the quarterback position. I'm
Yeah.
curious if Adrian Peterson's year was what convinced the Browns to draft Trent Richardson third overall. Because in his first year, he played well, but he also had 3.6 yards a carry with them. Didn't even rush for 1,000 yards. Traded him to the Colts for a first round pick, which is at the peak of the Browns' abysmalness. And the Colts, they get him and he averages 2.9 yards a carry to end his career, and then he's cut. Nobody picks him up. I feel like the part of the reason why he was drafted was simply because of how good Adrian Peterson was getting drafted that high.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely could be. Especially, no one really knows why the Browns do what they do, but typically it's not for a good reason. Especially, you take Brandon Weeden and Trent Richardson in this draft. Not a good combo. That's how teams get set back 5 years in a draft.
Yeah, and that draft was terrible. Every single player that I see here, they also drafted Emmanuel Acho that year, who played 2 games in general.
The Browns
Brad's,
drafted Emmanuel Acho? Oh my god.
yeah. Then we have like Ryan Miller played 1 game. Billy Wynn barely played for them. Mitchell Schwartz was actually pretty good for them. Outside of that, everybody else, this draft is 2012, and I see a lot of guys who were fizzled out by 2014, 2015.
Yeah. No, that'll be. Yeah, that's an interesting draft for sure. So 2025 NFL draft is behind us. We'll be moving on to 2026, previewing that draft in the next few weeks, because only about a month out from the NFL draft. Definitely excited for it. And then we have news in the NBA. They have officially approved the expansion. So now we're going to have 32 teams in the NBA. Looks like it's going to be one in Seattle, one in Las Vegas. NBA said that, Oklahoma City was pretty much stole the Thunder away from Seattle and the Supersonics, where it was a billionaire in Oklahoma City who just bought them and then moved them to Oklahoma City. Now they want to bring a team back to Seattle, who I believe is already a top 10 population. So you definitely have a fan base there to bring back the Supersonics. And then you also have Vegas, who's building the Summer League. And then Vegas has been getting a lot of pro sports teams now where you have the NFL team, have the hockey team coming there, and now they're trying to get an NBA team after hosting the NBA Cup as well. So it's going to start out at $7 to $10 billion for the bidding.
Yeah. Honestly, I think the locations are perfect for the NBA. The Supersonics, they were beloved. I'm not really sure exactly what caused them to relocate, especially to Oklahoma, but there's definitely a fan base there. I think they're going to probably have to realign their divisions. And I know they talked about moving either the Grizzlies, Pelicans, or Timberwolves to the east, which I think would be great. But Seahawks, I mean, having the Supersonics back is great for basketball. And then for Vegas, that's going to be great. I think ultimately, all within the span of like a 10-year period, you get the Golden Knights from hockey, who've been super successful. You get the Raiders, who now have the first overall pick. And then you get your NBA team. Now they're going to have the Athletics in baseball in 2028. So they have all four sports teams pretty quickly soon after. So Vegas is quietly becoming a sports city, which I'm excited to see. But I think they nailed it with both of these locations. I think they're going to be great. And now I'm interested to see how they realign the divisions and who goes to the East.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's a team like the Timberwolves. It's probably going to be the Pelicans, though. I feel like they're the most East right now because if you move Minnesota to the East, we've already seen Anthony Edwards in the conference championship seemingly get swept twice in the West, and it wasn't even close. And now they're going to move him to the East, and he would potentially have a chance to make an NBA Finals if the Celtics have a down year, or Halliburton isn't healthy again. And then if he gets to the finals versus like Oklahoma City or the Spurs, they would get demolished. So I don't necessarily know if you benefit from moving a star in the West like the Timberwolves and Anthony Edwards to the East. So I think probably the best bet would be building either the Grizzlies or the Pelicans in the East.
Yeah. I think they have to move two of those three teams. And I think Pelicans are the closest east, if I'm not mistaken, if not the Grizzlies. So I think it's going to be one of those two. The Timberwolves could make the East a lot more exciting. So I'm rooting for the Timberwolves and the Grizzlies to move out east, keep the Pelicans in the West. But that's my own selfish reasons. And I don't know. I think most likely the Timberwolves would be in the Central Division, and they'd probably realign where the Pistons are in the East and then make some adjustments. Otherwise, Pelicans are probably in that same division as the Magic and Wizards and Miami Heat. But I think they're probably going to separate it by four divisions and then have, obviously, the two conferences. But a conference of four divisions and four teams, most likely, is my guess.
Yeah, that would make the most sense. And the NBA is doing this right now because they're saying that global talent has exploded, and they've been getting a lot of good players from overseas. Celtics picked up a good one in Ugo. Then you also have Wembanyama, Luka Doncic. So two of the top five players in the NBA, arguably, are coming from overseas. You also have SGA, who is from Canada, Jokic as well. So like pretty much your entire top five as far as NBA players are all from outside the U.S. So global talent exploding is another reason. You're always going to have bad teams at the bottom of the league. So I think this is good for the NBA. It will be interesting to see how they will fill all of those teams as far as talent, especially with a league that has been going over some conversations where people in the media think the season should be shorter with how much extra mileage that teams are running in the pace and space era. So it'll be interesting. The NBA definitely has a lot of room to involve. They're talking about also doing a NBA Europe League as well.
Yeah, which I think I see why they're doing it, but Europe already has established Euro leagues already, so I'm not really sure how much the NBA would benefit from there, and who in the NBA is going to go overseas to play there. I feel like if you're playing overseas, you're playing overseas. So that's going to be a market that I think is going to be harder for them to penetrate than they think, unless if it's going to be something that fast tracks somebody to the NBA. If maybe you're a prospect, but I don't see why anybody would go to the NBA EuroLeague unless if it's something that's going to get them closer to the NBA. I just don't know unless if it operates kind of like a minor league team.
Yeah, and then Vegas is an interesting one too because Vegas saw their largest decline in tourism last year. They had a 7.5% drop in visitors, which is the sharpest annual decline outside of the pandemic for Vegas. And Vegas just seems like one of those cities that was a boomer fad where you kind of had to capture the magic in combination with gambling being exciting there, where you could only go to Vegas to do it. Prostitution as well. Boomers are definitely into that as a generation. So I think it's a decline in visitors, and now you're trying to diversify your economy now where you're moving away a little bit from gambling being your biggest sell because you can do so much of it online, especially with Polymarket. And then you're now turning into an event city where you're building spectacles, where you have the Sphere now. You still have a lot of premier UFC and boxing events. Moving into the NFL, where people will travel just to see their team. And then people who are at Allegiant Stadium, 80% of the people surveyed, the guests were either there for the specific game or concert. So it seems like they're becoming a little bit more of an event city now that gambling, it's just everywhere now. So Vegas kind of loses its magic. It's also an expensive city and it's a little bit more dangerous than some people would like it to be, especially for a major city where you should be able to just be walking around everywhere. It's not necessarily the kind of city where you can just go out and do that and go wherever without knowing where you are.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the NBA does in Vegas because it's already had issues with gambling as well in the NBA, and now you literally have a team in Vegas. So that's going to be interesting optics wise. I'm also interested to see how they're going to fill up this team. Like, who's going to be on this Vegas, whatever they are, Vegas, whatever team they end up calling themselves. Because it looks like they're going to protect 8 players from each team. And I don't know how much, like, those teams are going to suck pretty quickly. Because who are they going to protect? Like, obviously, the Celtics, pretty much their entire starting five. You're going to get people like, I don't know, Christian Braun, who's going to go to the Supersonics most likely. But you're not going to
Mm-hmm.
get like these teams are going to be really bad right away, which I guess is kind of expected with expansion teams. But I feel like 8 players being protected in the NBA compared to hockey, where it's been like that, I just don't think the carryover for the NBA, like the expansion's going to be they're going to suck for like the first 5 years of their career.
Well, it's like Denver. Their core is going to be Jokic, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, Christian Braun. And then outside of that, there's like a couple role players, like maybe Bruce Brown. And then outside of that, there's not too many other good players. The Thunder have a lot of talent on their team to go around, so they would definitely be a team where you could get some young talent from. But like even Boston, it's like, well, you have Jason Tatum, Peyton Pritchard, Jalen Brown, Derek White, and then it's like Namis Keita, uh, maybe Ugo, maybe Jordan Walsh, maybe Sam Hauser, and that's 8 guys right there. So it's not like there's a ton of teams with depth in the NBA to be pulling from.
Yeah, they're going to be pulling the ninth best player on every team, and they can only pick from one team once against 2 teams. So I just these teams are gonna they have an issue with top heavy talent already, and they're gonna add another 2 teams who are probably gonna be right where the Pacers, Wizards, Nets, and Jazz are as far as the first couple of years there. So like the talent pool, yes, it's diversified. I mean, obviously, like having different places to go to in the NBA is going to be exciting, but I just don't know. There's a lot of questions there for me about how this is going to pan out, and it looks like it's going to start 28-29 season. So
Yeah,
I guess as information rolls out, I'll know. But right now, I just think this expansion is kind of forced and not necessarily necessary.
yeah, because if we're looking at the East, you could argue that there are 3 maybe 4 teams if you're being generous that can make the finals: Pistons, Celtics, Knicks, and maybe the Cavaliers. Like the Sixers did just get VJ Edgecombe, but Joel Embiid's on his way out. But other than that, the Pacers just made the finals last year, and you lose Miles Turner and Tyrese Halliburton. They're the worst team in the NBA now, and they just lost 2 starters. So it's like, okay. And then in the West, there's maybe probably 4 or 5 teams that could make the finals. 6 if you're being generous. Like I think it would just be the Nuggets, Spurs, Thunder, and then it's like I can kind of talk myself into the Lakers, but they still have a lot of holes on that roster. The Timberwolves still have a lot of holes on that roster. I mean, Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert are both starting on that team. That's never good. And then the Rockets, like Kevin Durant is going to be gone there. So it's like, other than that, it's like you're looking at both conferences where you're going to add 2 more teams to the NBA where you can make an argument that there's only 7 or 8 legit finals contenders, and that's being generous. Because at the NBA, there's really only the Spurs and the Thunder in the West, and then in the East, it's really only the Celtics and the Knicks at this point, especially with Cade Cunningham having a collapsed lung.
Yeah, it's really exactly, and it's kind of what's the problem with the NBA. It's there we already know who's going to be in the conference finals. It's going to be Celtics Knicks or Celtics Pistons. In the West, it's going to be Pacers and Spurs. Or I'm sorry, Thunder and Spurs. Every other team, I don't really see any motion there. Like the Nuggets, maybe Lakers, maybe, but we're talking real strong maybes there. Timberwolves if they get hot, but it's like you have you're going to have 32 teams in this league, and only 8 of them are going to be actually competitive and actually worth watching. It's just we're talking about 25% of the league is watchable. It's just not ideal.
Yeah, and you only had 3 teams hit the 40-20 rule, and that was the Pistons, Thunder, and Spurs. And the Pistons have been good this year, but when I watch them, I just don't see them as a team that is going to be good in the NBA playoffs, especially if a team can figure out Cade or just put a lot of pressure on him and stretch him through a 7 game series. Like, how much does he really have in the tank? Because I don't see a bona fide number 2 player that's going to show up every single night alongside him.
Yeah, I don't either. But we shall see how it pans out. Looks like there's a few more votes, and they should know by 2020, the end of 2026, if this is officially passed, when they start actually doing bids for who ends up buying either of those 2 teams.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. $7 to $10 billion, definitely a good range there. I wonder if Dana White would buy a basketball team
That'd
in
be cool.
Vegas, especially he lives there. And then what else happened this week? Luca's been upset. Post divorce, Luca. They've only lost 1 game. They're 9-1. He dropped a 60 ball, and in that game, Bam decided to take advantage. Like, hey, scoring 83 isn't as easy as it looks, even when you have Luca at his best. He went out there and dropped 60 points, and the Lakers have been on a little bit of a heater now. Them, the Spurs, and the Thunder are all 9-1 in their last 10 games. So all of them going into the NBA playoffs hot there. But there's also been a lot of drama about people claiming that Luca should be the MVP this year, and he should have been in the conversation the entire time. He's leading the league in scoring. He has a case, and they're the number 3 seed in the West right now when they're kind of hovering around the 6th seed, and then he's exploded. And you said he was averaging 37 points in the past 10 games.
Yeah, since the breakup, he's averaged 37, 8, and 9. And like we mentioned, he had a 60-point game against Miami, taking it personally with Bam Adebayo. And then they've won 9 of the last 10 games in that stretch. So pretty much since the divorce, he's just gone on this generational run and helped his scoring averages quite a bit. As far as MVP, I don't know if I'd put him in the I wouldn't put him as the MVP, but if you want to put him in a top 5, I think he's worthy of a top 5 MVP finish. But I think there's plenty of other people, whether it's Jokic, Wembanyama is probably the favorite at this point. SGA is always in that conversation. Honestly, Jaylen Brown deserves to be in the MVP conversation as well. Those are the guys who I would put in the conversation. But Luka, it's deserving. Without them, the Lakers are not where they are today. So he is definitely valuable, but he's not the MVP for me.
Yeah, I don't think this year. I think Wemby with what he does on defense, and then SGA also being close to a 30-point score, and then also being another good player on defense. Like to me, like Luka has been a better defender this year, but Jalen Brown, Wemby, and SGA, it's like such a gap, and the offense is also so close to Luka, where it reminds me of the run that James Harden was on. Like people act like what we've seen with Luka is new. It's like it is special, but I do think he's very similar to James Harden because like James Harden has also had years where he's averaged over 30 points a game. He was going out there and getting 50-point triple doubles, and if you gave James Harden Kyrie Irving in his prime in the years where he was on the Houston Rockets and he was in a situation where he could go up against the Timberwolves in the conference championship instead of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, and Draymond Green all in their prime, I definitely think we would have seen James Harden in a finals if he was playing in this current NBA in his prime and had Kyrie Irving. So I think like
Yeah,
the comparison with him and Luka is pretty fair, but like he's just not a good enough defender.
yeah. And there's just too many other guys. With what Jalen Brown did for the Celtics, with Tatum being out, he deserves praise there. SGA, best player in the NBA currently. And then what Wemby's done on both sides of the ball, I like what Luka's done, but I don't think he's MVP.
Yeah, so should be a interesting finish into the playoffs. Celtics just snapped the Thunder's 12-game win streak. Jalen Brown MVP type of performance, 31 8-8. So definitely be an interesting finish. And then we'll stay posted on the NBA right now. Definitely follow up with that um, expansion.
No. But outside of that, before we end our show today, what have you been watching or playing of late?
Yeah, recently I've just been playing PGA on 2K. I can't think of any movies that have stood out to me. No shows I've really been watching, but PGA 2K is pretty solid. It's one of those games that it's just a chill vibe, and then you can kind of just turn your brain off where it's not that deep. It's not like 2K where you need to get too sweaty over it, or Madden even, where it's kind of you just go out there, kind of relax, turn your brain off, hit the ball. I've been playing the My Career, and overall, it's pretty solid. The difficulty, putting is definitely hard, but as far as the mechanics of the game and just hitting the ball, as someone who's never played golf before or played a golf game in my life, it's honestly pretty fun. And it's like been one of the more addicting games that I played in the past. Like I've been playing like a lot of RPGs like Far Cry. Haven't played a new sports game in a bit, so this one's been solid.
Yeah, I'm curious because, like, is the My Career kind of like 2Ks where there's like advertisements and like cutscenes and everything, or is it kind of just cut to the point? You do like the Masters and you do like the Waste Management Opens. Like, is it kind of like that, or how does the My Career work?
Yeah, so My Career, you have like a interview each week, and after a tournament, you have a sponsorship for clubs, golf, and apparel. So you can have three different sponsors. So right now I'm signed with Puma and forget the other ones off the top of my head, something like Bridgestone. And then you also have social media followers, so you can get social media followers in your press conferences, and you can challenge other golfers to a internet feud to also gain followers on your social media. And then the week is pretty much you have one optional practice you can do like a practice tournament or test out some sponsorship gear, and then you go on to play in the season tournament. And that's pretty much the weekly day to day. And then you have your press conferences. Your goal is to hit like 10 million followers on social media.
Okay, so it's kind of similar to 2K in that case, for the most part. That's cool. I had a
You
friend
just
visit
don't
from
suck forever
yeah
in 2K.
it, yeah 2K. You're bad for pretty much the entire season, and even then you're still looking. You have to basically buy your way to the top, which is why we don't play 2K anymore, sadly. Um, as far as what I've been watching, I had a friend visit from New Hampshire, and we went up to the Grand Canyon. We went up to Seligman. For those who don't know, Seligman is the inspiration for Radiator Springs for Cars. So I went and watched Cars for the first time in like a decade. No, why does nobody talk about how much of an asshole Lightning McQueen was? Like Lightning McQueen was the biggest out. He's not a very good superhero in this case because like you meet him and he's the biggest douche ever. He's like making fun. He fires his pit crew. He's saying he doesn't need any help. He's a one man show. Blah blah blah. And then he gets lost in Radiator Springs, and the whole time for most of the movie, he's just an asshole saying that he doesn't want to be here. He needs to be in LA. He needs to talk to these women, and then eventually he ends up having his hero's journey. But like the first, I forgot how much of an asshole that Lightning McQueen was for like the first 90% of the movie. He was just the worst. He was a monster. And
Yeah,
so, I don't know.
he definitely is. He has a redeeming arc, and then they take it over the top in Cars too. But I know, how did you feel about just Cars in general? Because I know a lot of people didn't like Cars, and then a lot of people were turned off by Cars too, and they thought it was just weird, a weird thing for Pixar to do. But I've honestly always had a soft spot for them. My older sister liked Cars 2 a lot, and she liked Lightning McQueen. So, and I honestly thought the third one was a pretty solid sequel, especially for Pixar. So, what were your thoughts just on looking back at other Pixar movies? How Cars fits in? Does it hold up as far as a good movie you would rewatch again?
For sure. Yeah, I think Cars is underrated because like they've turned toys into life, they've turned emotions into life. They've done all these different things. Like Pixar, it fits in within like the Pixar ecosystem. And Cars like I feel like making Cars like basically like the human element there. They do a really good job. And Radiator Springs, especially after going to the actual town it's inspired by, like I don't know. I think it was really neat to see like because it's inspired by like Route 66 for the most part and how these different towns got screwed over by the highway expansion of Route 66. But I think it's a great movie, and I need to see the other two movies again. But for the first one, it holds up really well, and by the end of it, like I'm invested in it, and I liked it. I think Mater is the star of the show, though. He's the real main character.
Yeah, that's really the make or break character for Cars because unfortunately, a lot of people see Mater as a Jar Jar Binks character, and Jar Jar Binks is either you love him or hate him. But I honestly like Mater. Like again, it's nostalgic. My older sister liked it when I was a kid, and she liked Mater a lot. So it's like definitely a nostalgic movie for me overall. It's like the first Cars, good redemption, and then you have the heel who's kind of the Lightning McQueen in Francesco in the second one, and then he's old. So it's a lot of old people jokes in the third one. So honestly, I think it holds up as a underrated animated trilogy because it is hard to string together three solid movies.
Yeah, I haven't seen the third one. I remember the second one being really good, but I'm surprised, especially with the fact that they're making a Toy Story 5 and they've done pretty much every other sequel that they haven't made a Cars 4. Because I feel like there's definitely an audience who would love to see a Cars 4.
Yeah, I think the last one came out in like 2017. So I do think they might do it at some point. I don't think Larry the Cable Guy and Owen Wilson are having anybody bang down the door for them right now. So I could definitely see them doing a Cars 4 because they took a lot of time in between the Toy Story movies. So like it was 2010 and then it's like 8 to 10 years you get a sequel. They made Finding Dory after how long? Like with Finding Nemo when it came out?
20. It's like 20
Yeah.
years. It felt like 15 years. But yeah, I don't know. I liked it. And Radiator Springs, I'll send you some pictures, but
It
Seligman,
looked
if you're
cool.
ever if you're doing like a road trip around Arizona, Seligman's a really cool town. They have this place called Delgadillo Snowcap, and essentially the town was created on like a Route 66 path because it connects to the Grand Canyon. So this guy had the idea to like make basically like the first drive-through ice cream place there. So it was really cute, cute little town. I
What's it
posted something
called?
on my Instagram about it.
The ice cream place?
It's called Delgadillo Snowcap, but it has like that '50s charm to it, and their ice cream is really good. We had a shake there. We had a burger. Um, yeah, it's just like a classic, cozy Route 66 town. Something that you would see in like the 50s.
Let me see this here. Okay. Yeah, that looks really retro.
Yeah, it's super. And there's a bunch of towns like that in Arizona, but like the whole town has like model cars. They have like, and it's not like one of those towns that's like gimmicky about
Was
it.
this
It's
guy
just
there?
like, yeah, just big old dude. Yeah, I don't know. It's just really cozy. I like those kind of towns.
Oh, they have the dip ice cream cone too.
Yeah, and the ice cream's great. It's one of the best ice creams I've had. And all like the different model cars that they have hanging around all have like eyeballs on it to kind of commemorate cars in a way. But if you ever doing an Arizona road trip, I highly recommend it, which I know you've done. But if anybody else listening has, and it's a good spot.
Yeah, I'm definitely sure I'll be in Arizona again. Arizona's a fun state to drive through. There's a lot of cool nature up north, especially with the Grand Canyon. You have Lake Powell there. Sedona's cool, except for the traffic circles there. When we were driving through, I was like about to rage quit. It was like, how many circles? If you've been in Sedona, you know, but who decided to put 10 traffic circles? We used to call them shark crossings when we were on road trips, but like, who decided to put 10 traffic circles throughout the entire part of Sedona? And I bet they have more. Wonder how many
Oh,
they actually have.
they have like 15. I remember counting like 15 of them. But you lose count after a while because it's not like even if you go out of Sedona, like Prescott has a bunch of roundabouts too, and it's like every other mile there's a roundabout. It's insanity.
They have approximately 12 to 13 roundabouts in Sedona, and adjacent, the Oak Creek Village does as well.
It's ridiculous.
It's like, because millions of visitors pass through Sedona annually, traffic can still become heavily congested despite these circles. I feel like what might be
Because of these
easier
circles.
is just lights. And then also watch for pedestrians, be cautious, especially near popular spots. Yeah, no shit. Is this the most traffic circles per square foot? Let's see. I really want to know who has the most traffic circles out of any town per square foot. The most is in Carmel, Indiana, that has 155 roundabouts within a 49-mile square radius, where Sedona has 13 roundabouts in about a 25-mile square radius. So not quite. Not quite there.
But still a shit ton of roundabouts. A cartoonish amount, dare I say.
Have you did you watch the trailer for Rogu and the Mandalorian?
Yeah.
There's news that apparently the runtime for that's going to be 2 hours and 20 minutes. Like,
Why?
that seems like too long. It's like, especially with Disney Star Wars movies, I feel like if you want to get people back, you really need to just have a short, fun movie. Especially people are already getting Pedro Pascal fatigue because he's
Fatigue.
just been in everything recently, and now you're gonna make this a 2 hour and 20 minute movie. And the trailer, it kind of just looked like peak millennial slop as far as like comic book movies. We're gonna have a lot of action, and then millennials will just like it because, oh, I know Pedro Pascal and Baby Yoda is so funny and cute. um I guess, if you're into that, but it just seems like a weird way. And then you have Ryan Gosling's Starfighter movie that is also coming out next year, I believe, and that's really going to make or break Star Wars at this point. But do you have any hope for this Rogu and Mandalorian movie? Because I watched the first season of the show, and then it was just too much, and I just can't stay interested in a Star Wars or Marvel or anything like that anymore.
It's just slop. I mean, it's all it is. I mean, the thing about this movie though is I think real Star Wars fans are all going in with very low expectations. So if they're even showing up to it, they're just expecting like just a popcorn kind of movie, like you would expect with a Marvel movie. Like I don't expect this to motivate me. I don't think this is going to be life changing, like the movie Barbie was for my friend Evan. Like it's not going to change the world. But 2 hours and 20 minutes, this movie should be a firm hour 40, hour 40, a little bit of action, hero's arc, bam, movie's over. And if they can do it successfully, then they can make fucking 15 different Mandalorian movies, and it'll be fine to watch. But as far as like my expectations for it, I don't expect it to be good. I think it's going to be bad. And then the Ryan Gosling Star Wars movie, it's like, what are we doing? Like, just stick to the Skywalkers, to be honest. Like, that's what people care about. That's the actual story. But you fucked it up because you made three terrible movies in a row and ruined the franchise. So I'm not excited for it. I'll probably still see it, but probably when it's on streaming platforms.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's worse, having to spend a night outside in Phoenix in the summer, or going to see The Mandalorian in theater
Well, the
to
good news
escape
with
the
me is
heat?
that good news is that it's always summer in Arizona. That's just the way it is. My friend visited. It's usually 80 degrees here, and it's 105. It's been 100 degrees for 11 consecutive days.
11
That's
days
insane.
already?
Yeah, and usually that happens in May, and now it's doing that in March. So we are in for a miserable summer.
That's crazy. Should be fun. Maybe it's just heating up now and then it'll cool off later. But it seemed like, yeah, last year is kind of a mild summer in Austin. People are saying it's going to be hotter. It's already been like in the 90s, but it hasn't felt like too hot. It's like Texas sun is always warm, but it hasn't been unbearable yet. But we'll see. Should be a fun summer though.
Yeah, but we'll be here to cover it. We covered the South predictions for the AFC and NFC South, expansion draft, all things NFL and NBA. Make sure to tune in next Monday as we cover all things Brickyard. But most